Well, hello, everyone. Took a little while. Happy Friday. Thank you for being patient. This is Chad Quinn. I'm CEO of Ecosystems. It is the end of the week. Happy Friday to everybody. Maybe as we start and get warmed up a little bit for our time together, if anybody would love to, in the chat, maybe take a moment and just tell us what you're grateful for. I'm grateful that we got this session going forward in LinkedIn Live. We're learning it as we go, the technology. But maybe you're grateful for the end of the week. Maybe you're grateful for a family member, a work colleague. Maybe you're grateful for something that has been a nice gift, an unintended gift during the pandemic. We'd love to just start with that in the chat. If those that would be brave enough to indulge us with what you're grateful for. And I'll tell you, it's, all the science behind it says that when we get into that attitude of gratitude, that honestly our body changes, our immune system increases, we feel better mentally, we're more fulfilled, we're more optimistic. It's just a nice way to start any session with gratitude. I'm grateful to be with you guys. I'm grateful for our guests. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we'd like to unfold in our conversation today and bring in two of our friends from IDC to help this discussion. Let me first tell you about the overarching topic. And it's just something we're really passionate about and excited around, this concept of value selling and taking a look at surveying a large community of leaders like yourself and understanding value selling from many different dimensions. How does it look like for a sales leader, the value selling approach? How does it look like for somebody in value management, this emerging job function that's out there? How does it look like for somebody in customer success that is going post the sale into success and realization? It has a lot of different facets to it. And that's what kind of excites us. And so we are thrilled that in our partnership with IDC, we have put together kind of an inaugural, we underscore the word inaugural because we're going to be doing this ongoing survey, benchmark survey from those different dimensions on how people look at value selling excellence. And so to help guide us in this conversation, and maybe to start, just to give you a sense of the partnership that Ecosystems and IDC have, I'm going to first introduce Jason Cunliffe, and Jason's the Vice President of Content Marketing at IDC. Welcome, Jason, and maybe just a little bit on your background and the partnership with Ecosystems.
Sure, thanks, Chad, and hi, everyone. I'm grateful to be here in the moment today. We're excited to bring our market-leading research. Globally, we've got over 1,000 analysts, and combining that capability together with the Ecosystems platform to help sellers sell more confidently, with the backing of our market intelligence and custom business value research. We're excited about it.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, in fact, if we pulled up a visual, this concept of having the ability to make the salesperson more confident. So imagine in your value selling, probably nobody's ever heard this from a customer. Where did you get that number? How can you substantiate that value claim? Tell me where is that input coming from? We always hear that in any kind of value discussion where there's a healthy skepticism from our buyers as to where the value is and how you can substantiate it. And so with this partnership, we're taking all of that market intelligence, all of that third-party credibility, all of that objectivity of IDC, and we're combining it in a very intuitive, collaborative platform that allows sellers and customer success leaders and value management leaders to have these very engaging conversations and to be able to then answer, where did you get that? Well, we got that from an objective third-party IDC. So a really powerful, exciting partnership unfolding, and that kind of led us to start to do more benchmarking within the community on how they think of value excellence. And so I'm going to bring in our other guest here who has been instrumental, Randy Perry. Randy's the Vice President of Sales Enablement for IDC. He has done over 500. I always like to say this, Randy. For me, it's like the most incredible stat. He's done over 500 business value studies, which, to put that in perspective for our group today, that's heavy lifting. That's going into a customer's site. Think of all of our customers out there and not doing the value promise discussion, but actually doing the heavy lifting of what did you actually get out of this technology and how would you quantify that? So he's done that in extensive research in over a decade worth of work in building the business value practice for IDC. And he's been our quarterback, our lead in putting together this peer benchmarking survey. And I'm going to let him drive it for us. A couple more stats for you to think about before we bring in Randy. One is this survey. Many may be asking, how do we participate or how do we get involved? So it's an ecosystems community. This was taken by 60 plus world-class companies that have gone through and effectively assessed themselves in different aspects. Randy took all that information and he'll go through kind of the methodology, and then we'll start to throw out some key insights. So with that, I'll hand it over to my friend Randy.
Well, thanks for the great introduction, Chad. I'm happy to be talking with you all today, especially about the work we did. And I want to say a couple notes before we get into the results. And we're not going to go through many, just a few slides to kind of focus on the key points. One was, I do a lot of these types of maturity analyses for IDC, looking at organizations and their practices and their technologies to determine where they are in the spectrum of either digital transformation or whatever. And I will say that this group, the advisory ecosystem members that took the survey, are a very advanced group relative to what we would do if we did a normal analysis across different companies everywhere. So it was a very interesting group to work with, got a lot of good insights out of the survey. You will see on the data that we're presenting today that we have what we call leaders as well. So we took this group, which had very high numbers, and we also focus on the top 10% just to see how the leaders' answers might have differed from the group as a whole. And you can see not a whole lot. What was most significant, and this is throughout the study, we asked the not only for sales, but we also asked for customer success and the value management group, what are the largest challenges? And in all cases, number one was that the reps are not skilled to selling to C-level buyers. And that's really, that's no surprise on the whole, because that's been, really the issue in IT for selling since kind of the advent of digital transformation, when the stakeholders changed, right? And the stakeholders went from being organizations or being people that knew about IT to people that really were focused on other things other than IT, and also expanded the range of them, so line of business, different groups, and that really didn't buy IT to reduce their costs or things like that. What they were purchasing IT for was to improve their business outcomes. So you change the audience, you change the messaging, and it causes problems, especially for sales to try to have these conversations. And we find that most organizations, there's 10 to 20% of the group, of the sales group, and they could be SMEs, but they're going to be able to have these conversations with C-levels, talk about value, talk about the things that are important to those C-level elements. And then 80 to 90% of the salespeople are just not going to be comfortable with that organization. So that conversation. So the key will be, in all cases, is to make that a conversation that 90% of your sales force can have. And as you can see here, it's still a huge problem. And all of these problems were significant, but all related, right? Pipeline development, issues finding qualified buyers. A lot of that's because you didn't target the right buyers in the first place. Inability to articulate and quantify our unique value, having the value proposition set out ahead of time and talking about that, and having that in your back pocket is what enables you to talk to C-level. And then finally, pipeline prosecution. Not moving to a proof of concept to sale means that, again, you're not having the right value conversations with the right level of whether it's C-level or stakeholders in non-IT areas, not having that value conversation early enough and convincingly enough to close the deal. all related problems. What was surprising was that even these very advanced organizations are having these problems. The other thing that was kind of an odd takeaway was that 30% of the organizations in the survey didn't have value management teams. That was a bit shocking considering how advanced they were in other areas. And the other thing was what the leaders really pointed out was how important it was to get value management involved in all stages, especially the early stages of the sales engagement, from pre-sales, customer success, marketing, working with all these other teams throughout the process. Also, interestingly enough, 50% of them were involved, for the leaders were involved in the product development stage. That's important too, for value, to really have a good value story. It's important to understand from the beginning of product development how it's going to be marketed, all those different stages, really developing your value story way back then. And that's important in a couple ways. One, it guides these other areas in terms of what they're developing, what they're doing, so that they're thinking about value. Secondly, by the time it gets, the value management, the value discussion is presented by your salespeople, they're a lot more comfortable with the discussion because it's been ingrained in the way the organization operates, and that makes it easier to have. So if you have the value conversation down, then you have something you can offer to C-level. Customer success, we also asked the same question. They also related the problem that they can't communicate with the C-levels. The other thing that they added, though, on the customer success side was the fact that they felt that their salespeople in the earlier stages of the buyer journey weren't communicating or getting an understanding of what the value of the customer's outcomes, desired outcomes were. And that's another important part of this whole process, is to, in early stages, have these customer success conversations started by your salespeople in many ways, pre-sales, about what is this particular customer, what's important to them, what are they looking to do? Because ultimately you want to be able to provide the solution, being your technology or service, that's going to enable them to do that. So very important part of customer success. And then same thing with the value team. And the value management team had two big things. One, C-level conversations. The other was need to scale. And the interesting thing about this is that on average, these organizations had about 1 to 3% of their value management team made up about 1 to 3% of their sales team, which is very, very, very small. So clearly they can't, it makes it hard for them to scale, makes it very difficult for them to have sufficient conversations with enough of the customers to really make a difference as well. So one of the kind of key findings come out of this is you need to expand your value management teams. Any thoughts? Although I'm afraid of hearing my voice again.
Yeah, we get that feedback. Well, there's some great things in the chat, which I love.
Yeah.
That I'm hearing. I'm just kind of reading as we go, but I love this concept of business acumen equals confidence, Randy. I wonder if that's, just people's ability and understanding of the value and being able to articulate it has an impact in their confidence to be able to share it. So we're getting some feedback on that. And then maybe could you touch upon, what do you think about value from an industry perspective?
From an industry perspective?
Yeah, like is there, in our value articulation, do we have to nuance between talking to somebody in healthcare and the metrics that matter to them, or somebody in financial services?
I think one of the important things to establish is that you need to be able to have a kind of a unified value proposition, but it might change depending on your audience. Not your value proposition, but the way you present it, because presenting a value proposition to a high school is a lot different than to a manufacturer. So I think it's very important not just to have the value conversation tailored by industry, but by other personas as well, right? So in many cases, the CFO has different drivers than the CEO, and the CEO has different drivers than the CIO. So, in all cases, you've got to be armed with the right conversation to have for the stakeholder you're talking to. And if that varies by industry, that's just as important.
Great point. The other thing I thought was interesting in the study to kind of, and you weighed in on it a little bit, is, this emerging value management office, this teams that are being set up. And I think research showed that in the average group, I think the average, still 30% of those companies don't even have a value team. So that was kind of an interesting insight of, hey, we need to be starting to input resources to this structure around value management. And then the scaling aspect, that even with a team of 3, we're getting some benchmarks in this study that show how much can you actually cover deals with just 3 people, and are you just kind of skimming the surface? What kind of popped out for you in that part of the study?
Same thing. I mean, that was a continual issue, was that there's just not enough, that the teams aren't large enough, they're not involved early enough in the process, and they can't cover sufficient number of customers to make as big a difference as they should. I mean, a lot of these organizations had fairly sizable customer success organizations. So, so maybe there's some cross, cross-pollinating there, where you have different elements that are involved in different stages. Make sure that it's really 2 things, right? It's really understanding what your target audience's goals are, and I think it's important to companies that you're interested in their goals. And then secondly, making sure they understand what your value proposition is. Again, having those conversations early on, and throughout the process, and quite frankly, for the value side, especially beyond the sales process.
Yeah. And we're going to flash something up here for the members that have that are in this live stream with us.
There's a lot of great comments.
Yeah, I love the comments coming through here. And let's attack a couple. One thing I want to pop up on the screen just quickly is that there is a value management maturity model that we've put together at Ecosystems. So, and it looks at your value practice and what good, okay, good, great, and world-class. So we'll drop a link. Anybody that's interested in that maturity model, that's looking at how do I scale value across the organization, feel free to do so. And then the second thing here, and this kind of goes back to the C-level discussion, we'll put up that Bain value pyramid just for a second. Value sometimes can be both quantitative. We think about that in terms of hard metrics, but there's also a qualitative aspect to it as well. And so we'll also drop a link in, or if folks are interested, please let Jen Camber know in the chat, on either the Bain value pyramid, which kind of has a holistic structure around value, or the VMO maturity model. That might be interesting as well for those that are kind of baselining or benchmarking themselves. Randy, one question that came up is, do you also think that scale, as we look at scaling the value function, could also happen with the partner community?
Yeah, the survey we did was, there wasn't a lot of organizations that were driven by their partners. They, on average, I think they were less than 30% of sales through partners, but that obviously that differs by every company. And the great thing about having partners, whether they're accounting for 30% of your sales or 70% of your sales, it gives you another avenue, obviously, to reach customers. And quite often when you're planning things that are really designed essentially, for your internal sales force and those assets, you've got to remember your partners will grab onto that stuff, many times quicker than your internal salespeople will, because in many cases they're used to selling more complex or complete products to those end users. They have in many cases, greater stakes within the end users, a better communication with the end users than in many cases your individual salespeople. So very important in anything you develop, any kind of systems, any kind of practices, that you always keep in mind that at the end of the day, you might get more value through those partners than any other any other group. So you always keep your partners in mind.
Yeah. And talking about scale, I want to bring Jason into the conversation. Jason, talk a little bit about the marketing sales scale that needs to occur, or that you feel is an opportunity.
Right. No, I was going to preface as well, just on all this discussion around partner success and sales success, having the right message and the right data points to drive a conversation around value. I've also noticed in the chat this the idea around partner success and enabling those partners is also the preparation, right? So they could be armed and have access to all the right information, but you've got to have the preparation put in to be able to articulate those value points. So I think that there is a big trend now that we're seeing around this concept of digital coaching, and just wanted to emphasize that point. I know it's something, Chad, that we're working on with you in this partnership. I think the preparing to have the conversation and carrying it forward is an important one. To instill the confidence that reps need in order to be successful. The second point I was going to make is the one that you're teeing up here. Is there is so much investment made in teeing up the digital dialogue, right? Generating awareness, leads, interest, and so forth. And one of the things that I think that the things that we're working on that are going to make us successful with this is putting our salespeople in the position to carry that message forward. It's one dialogue, right? The digital dialogue and the sales interpersonal dialogue is one. And when you architect, at least from IDC's perspective, is when you architect research that can fuel both a digital dialogue in the marketing funnel and the sales dialogue that the sales folks need to pick up. If you architect that correctly throughout a content engagement to account for both of those, success to me is around the corner. And we see a lot of that success in some of the engagements that we run.
Great point, Jason. And I'm seeing in the chat here questions about the digital coaching that Jason mentioned. So IDC and Ecosystems have come together to put together what we're calling a guided digital coaching environment. So visualize that you're collaborating with a prospect or customer on a business case, and you're a seller, as an example. And you're maybe, to the research, I'm not really confident or feel secure about going in front of this C-level person. And I'm in my workflow. I'm actually working with the prospect on the business case. I can literally, in that same workflow, click a button called guided digital coaching and be brought to a private environment where I can start to learn from experts, from an IDC expert on how to position a value around a particular technology solution, or what are some of the case study findings, or how to talk ROI. So these are going to be things that are embedded into a customer-facing conversation that allow sellers to go privately in their own little environment, learn about that issue, that value driver, that way to talk to a customer, and then go right back into their customer-facing collaboration. And so we're really excited by that going forward.
I would just add to that too, Chad, the aspect or the notion of market education, right? And market trends education is arming a sales rep, arming his or herself with data, right? That positions them, that up levels the conversation around trends in the marketplace, things that buyers are interested in understanding from the type of research that we're able to provide and that we often do in the content marketing world. We want to be able to make that available to the sales world as well.
Yeah, I love the work you're doing there. Randy, do keep us honest on some of the insights here.
Well, I've been looking at a lot of the comments, which are great, and one thing about the value messaging, again, starting early on and carrying it through your organization as well as your partners. At the end of the day, and part of this conversation is everybody has to be trained in how to do this, and how to do it correctly and consistently, so you have the same message throughout your organization, even through your partners. So that's really the focus of this digital coaching thing, is to teach your salespeople how to use all these assets you're providing them to help close the deal at the end of the day and carry on for the next project. And so I think that's and everybody should be using it. Field sales, and in many ways, you also want to put it in front of your customers as much as possible too. And I think that's one of the things we're trying to do through the platform, because you've got to continually educate your customers on your value proposition and how that value proposition helps them achieve their business priorities and overcome their challenges. And it's important to start that early on in the marketing process, so that there's messaging out there that's preparing the C-level buyer to understand ahead of time, before he talks to a salesperson, about what the value proposition is and how it might be able to help them. It's important to fill the top of the funnel, the sales funnel, with prospects and customers that understand what that value proposition is going to be. And so that way, by the time your salesperson has that first conversation, it's an easy conversation to have. You've kind of automated the process. You provided everybody with training and information so that they're ready to have that conversation. They already see you as a value provider, so they want to talk to you about that. Makes it easier on your salespeople. As we like to say, you want to make it easy on your salespeople to make a sell, and you want to make it easy on your customer to buy from you. And that's really the kind of the value proposition process.
Randy, this being LinkedIn Live, I don't think I've asked you this before, but I'm just interested, and it may depart a little bit from the benchmark survey, but in all of your research, those 500 plus business value studies that you've done over the years with companies, are there some ahas between what the provider thought they were trying to deliver on value, and then you get on site with the customer and this is where the actual value is? How would you characterize some of those disconnects?
Well, early on, our customers, which are our IT providers, they thought that they were totally focused on reducing cost of infrastructure, right, and those sorts of things. They were very, very TCO oriented, and that was good for a while when the industry took a downturn and things like that. But since the age of digital transformation, and however far you want to go back on that, what's more important to the buyer is now all of a sudden, kind of what's going to be the impact on my my employee productivity. What's going to be the impact on how I can get to market quicker? What's going to be the impact on how I can make decisions better? And you talked earlier about some of the softer, not so quantitative types of values. CEOs want to be known as innovative. How do I make my company more innovative? How do I, accelerate my ability to do things within the organization? So it's part of that conversation too that we find, and we find that we're interviewing in many cases IT people that have implemented solutions, and they're concerned about those kind of things much more than they used to be concerned about how much did it cost, how long did it take to implement. And so what's always surprising is to come back to our clients and tell them, hey, it's important to be able to do these costs and things like that reduction, but they're looking at other things. I see to what's going to be the impact on my stock price. Yes. Yeah. How's this going to affect my brand?
Right.
Things like that. So, those are those are things I think that are most eye-opening when we come back to our customers. Same products, same solutions, but how do your customers perceive what the value you're providing?
What a great, I think that, that is a major point for us to reflect on, just because probably everybody in this live stream has heard or been guilty of it, myself included, where you think, oh, cost. Let's show the hard cost savings. Let's do, and although that's important, based on your research, Randy, and your end customer discussions, elbow to elbow with our buyers and talking to them, there's a set of higher order value that they're looking for around transformation, innovation. How do I look within the organization? Am I a change agent? Some of these qualitative value elements that we incorporate in the platform with IDC that go beyond just the financials. And that's a really important point to anchor on. Randy, where do you, if you were to, again, for everyone's benefit, survey done by 60 plus companies in the ecosystem community, please drop a line in the chat if you want to learn more about being a part of the community and having access to benchmark, because our intent is to grow this database substantially over time with the leadership of IDC. So please, if interest there, let Jen Camber know in the chat on joining the community. And then 2, on the survey itself, it looked at, again, sales leadership, value management leadership, and customer success. What are some of what you would call the emerging best practices that you would point to that the leaders are doing, Randy, that others could start to hone in on?
We actually have best practice. I think we have a slide for that, but we can also talk to it, of course. And here they are. I think there's a couple things. One is this idea that you want to have these conversations, so that let's think about, what are things we can do to improve our sales. One is to make sure we're targeting the right audience. And as we know, this audience has shifted. We want to be able to talk to C-level providers. We want to be C-level personas. We want to be able to talk to line of business that don't really care about technology. They just want to have something that's going to help them improve their business. So we want to target the right audiences. We want to, provide from day one messaging to them that talks about our value, talks about our concern for what they want to accomplish with their business. And that's really marketing, collateral and things like that. We want to produce something that a C-level person is going to want to read that talks about your company and the value it's going to deliver. So that helps to set up the sales process. Then we want to have a lot of tools, to help us automate that process. Because again, very complex to continually have these discussions. You want to have something that enables your salespeople to have these conversations, makes it easy for them to sell, carries your value proposition. And you want to have something that communicates directly with customers, right? Because as we know, especially more and more, things have to be virtual. So arming your sales force with a set of PowerPoints is just not going to do it. So they need something they can communicate back and forth with prospects and with existing customers and talk about, their desired outcomes and talk about the value propositions you're going to provide. So that's really key, to have all these tools to make it easy for your salespeople. For customer success, it's very important for them to get involved early on in the process. And again, let's talk to the customers about what outcomes they want to get out of this. What are they trying to do in their businesses that you're going to help them with? And then, have detailed success plans, identify what success looks like, have these conversations with your customers, with your partners, and then as much as possible, try to track the achievement of success throughout the process. When you identify from early on what the goals are, to when you're finishing, and then beyond. And we know that one of the most important things to do is, because you're going to plan, your customer's not a one project and done. You want to continue to have these conversations with them, and you want to come back to them and say, look, we were able to show value the last time you engaged us in this project. Let's continue with that on. So you want to have this idea that you're going to continue the conversation, and the conversation will change from time. It might change by persona. As you add new products and services, your value is going to change as well. But you always want to keep your customers and your prospects informed of what that is. So I think, and it's got to be the thing you center your business on. Your sales business approach, your marketing, everything has got to be about showing potential customers what our value proposition is and how we can solve their problems. Because that's all that really matters to the customers at the end of the day anyway. They don't care about bells and whistles. They don't care about any of this. What they care about is a partner that's going to help them solve problems.
I want to bring in Jason to this, because Jason, you're doing a lot of thoughtful work on the buyer, a buyer guide, conversation guide, which kind of speaks to this concept of get in early and be well prepared. Maybe talk a little bit about how this buyer guide could fit in the ecosystems platform and help somebody be prepped better to have that C-level conversation.
Sure. Well, it's a couple things here. I think one, in the work that we do in our business value practice to fuel content marketing, marketing dialogue, digital marketing dialogue. We do a lot of these business value studies, and there's a lot of very valuable research and data that goes into publishing those studies, and those are the ones that Randy's produced over the years. And what we find, of course, is that when you're in a sales environment and a selling environment, it's very difficult to open up these types of studies and reports and speak to the content, the valuable content that's inside them. So the idea is that as we move to this concept of one dialogue, is arming and developing content that puts a salesperson in a position to carry that message forward in an intelligent manner, not clicking around on page 2, 3, 8, 10, 12, but developing succinct conversation guide that can be used twofold. One is prepare behind the curtains to have the conversation and go through the key highlights that are found in these studies. And then two, use that guide as an actual content piece to drive a conversation with customers, in this case around value, right? And so what that does is it's a good setup type of document to say, cite the research from IDC, and then set up a conversation in terms of, well, based on all of these results, how can we then customize a solution based on these value inputs that would be very specific to your particular situation. So I think that's the concept, and frankly, in all of our content moving forward, it's bringing that philosophy of the awareness and engagement that content marketing brings needs to connect to the sales dialogue in an intelligent manner to put the sales folks in a position to carry the message forward and do so in an intelligent manner.
Yeah. Great stuff. So we've had a lot that we put forward today. I'm going to try to first, let me thank Randy and Jason, wonderful guests. Thank you for your partnership. Thank you for your thought leadership. And in our wrap up, I wanted to just give folks a little bit of a sense of things that we've talked about and where you can find them. So one is what has been front and center in our conversation today is this inaugural benchmark survey, which is very comprehensive in looking at sales, customer success, and value. If you're interested in that benchmark and getting your own kind of peer comparison, how do we stack up against these leaders? What are we doing in these various different elements? Again, we're going to make sure that we get you access or get you more information about the benchmark study and the community at large around the advisory ecosystem. That's number one. 2, we mentioned a couple other artifacts for you. One is this value pyramid that people were interested in that looks at both the quantitative and qualitative. That's all incorporated in the Eco platform. We'll make sure that we give you links out to both the article on that, as well as information on how that richer, broader conversation can occur in a value discussion online with your prospect or customer. And then 3, what I wanted to do is just make sure that you were aware of some upcoming events. So we're going to put up a slide here that talks about some upcoming events. So one of them is Eric Ranta, who's director of the Cloud Value Advisors at Google. He runs the advisory ecosystem for value management. We're going to have an entire session where we break down and deep dive on things like, how many people should I have in my value management office? What's the right ratios? What's the right percentage of deals and coverage for the VMO office? All types of benchmarks that we routinely hear from people are so valuable for them to be able to have for their own planning and allocation of resources internally. So be on the lookout for that event, or get curious on that. That's going to be next week, where we deep dive on the survey results, particularly for value management. Then we also have a great conversation underway the following week, which is around expansion, which has a huge value element to it. How do we expand the role between value management, sales, and customer success? What's the right motion? Who leads, who follows, who integrates, who supports? And then also, maybe I'll give it a moment for Randy to talk about this upcoming IDC event that we want to make sure we get people to as well. There it is. Go for it, Randy.
Okay. We have an annual event where we invite our customers and other companies to come, and we call it IDC Directions. And it's really a whole day, and actually we have 2 days now, where we're going to share with you kind of the latest IDC research, what's going on in the market, what's going on with the trends, kind of how IDC looks at the future of IT, what kind of events have occurred since the impact of COVID on and how important digital resiliency is. That so we would like all of you to come. Everybody who attends, and you can register for free, and you can see the event there, and you'll get to hear from a lot of IDC experts. You'll get to hear a ton of research. And I think it's a very enjoyable, informative time. So we'd welcome everybody to come.
Excellent. And we popped a link in for everybody on that event so that you can access it directly. Jason, it's good to see you. I love the shirt.
Yeah.
Thank you. We had a little bit of a change in prep here. But always glad to have time with Jason and Randy. Love the work that you do and all the insights that you bring. Both of you are just valued partners. IDC is an incredible market research. I think I heard one time like 300,000 IT buyer surveys in a year across a variety of different properties. But just think about how comprehensive that is, and such just a treasure of insights that you can provide us around how the buyer thinks and behaves. And then finally, just let you guys know, we're taking those IDC critical intelligence and putting it in this guided digital coaching and putting it in the platform for these customer-facing conversations, so that we're really, as Randy said, we're addressing the skill issues, the competency issues, and the scale issues together with IDC and ecosystems. So with that, I'm going to wish everyone a happy Friday. Thank you for being with us on LinkedIn Live, and we'll see you down the road. Take care, all. Bye-bye.
Thanks, all.